Hello everyone, my name is Scott Lowe and I'm here to bring you a video review of the HTC One M8. Now this is the successor to last year's HTC One, one of my favorite phones of last year, as well as HTC's big flagship phone for this year. So a number of changes right out the gate. The design is obviously larger to accommodate a 5-inch display, up from the 4.7-inch model of last year. You've got the same dual stereo speakers, although they're absent the Beats branding. On the back, the material is now kind of like a brushed metal. It's a little slicker, a little harder to keep a grip on. It also attracts a lot of smudges, so it's a little harder to keep clean, as you can tell. Like, I've had this phone for a week and it already looks a little worn. But the good thing is like scratches in particular aren't really a problem. The other big thing is they've moved the buttons from the bottom that were capacitive touch buttons on the last model. Now they're all software-based, like a Nexus 5 and a lot of kind of flagship phones for 2014 for Android. So it's really, really helpful to move that into the software. So in terms of the back, though, the most notable thing you'll see is the changes to the camera. This now has the same ultra-pixel camera of last year. It's a 4-megapixel camera, which doesn't honestly produce the best looking photos. There are like kind of still a little bit of softness to them. They're great for low light, but you know, it can't hold a candle to the iPhone 5S or the Samsung Galaxy S4, and almost assuredly the Galaxy S5 when it inevitably releases. So what they've done to offset that is now the new second sensor. So now it has a second camera, which actually is used to detect depth. So if you want a more realistic depth of field effect, it actually detects where objects are in relation to the phone. So if it's closer, it'll make that sharper, it'll blur out everything in the back, and it's better than most software-based solutions. Personally, I would have preferred a higher quality, primary camera and left it to software, because honestly the depth of field stuff, it's cool, but it's just not, I wouldn't say it's a priority over just overall image quality. So it's kind of a disappointment there. But it's more than sufficient for Instagram or like pictures of your food or your cats, which I'm really, really fond of, obviously. One other really notable feature is now they support expandable storage. So last year's model, you could get it in 32 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes of storage, and there was no way to expand upon that, which is kind of a standard feature for Android phones. Now the HTC One M8 does. So you have the capacity to expand it by up to 64 gigabytes or more using a micro SD card, so that you can free up more space as time goes on. So if you install a lot of apps, you have a lot of music, you want to you hit your limit, you have that capacity to expand it, which is a really, really nice feature. But the other big thing, of course, is HTC does their Sense software, which is a UI layer over Android, which is stylized specifically for HTC products, and they've updated it for the HTC One M8. So you've got the blink feed of last year, which has been updated to incorporate more sources. It's a little more kind of clean looking. It's a little flat, which is great. There are fundamental changes to the UI in terms of kind of quick access features. You've got the capacity to turn auto rotate off on the fly. The actual settings menu looks completely different than it does on stock Android or other UI skins, but it's all very, very clean and really easy to use, so I'm a big fan of it, actually. But there's also other stuff, like really helpful features, like so if your phone is off, you want to access it quickly, you just double tap the screen, which is particularly helpful because the phone is so big. The power button's all the way on the top here. It's hard to reach sometimes, so just being able to double tap the screen is really, really great. There's also other value-added features like Fitbit tracking, so if you want to keep track of how many steps you've taken, your calorie intake, that sort of thing, it's baked in, and it uses the inertial sensors of the HTC One M8, which is forgoes the need for an additional wristband or whatever. Although obviously you get more features if you use that. So it is kind of cool. There is stuff like that. And then on the front, you've also got this higher quality front-facing camera for better selfies if you're into that sort of thing. It's actually 5 megapixels, which makes it actually a higher megapixel count than the rear camera, which is a little strange. And I have to say, it does actually take some of the best looking selfies I've seen on a smartphone. So if you're into that sort of thing, this is your phone. But of course, the most important feature of the HTC One M8 is the battery life. If you're using an iPhone or perhaps other competing Android devices, you may find yourself struggling to get through a whole day with a single charge. Not with the HTC One M8. I have made it through a single day, potentially even a day and a half sometimes, without having to even worry about where a charger is. It's that good. And I've got Fitbit tracking going. I'm getting constant notifications. I'm like a power user for the phone, and I am having no problem. So if you're looking for peace of mind for battery life, this is the phone to go with. I'm really, really pleased with it. There's also other ultra battery saving modes that you can get into in the case of emergency. If you're like trying to stretch out the length of the battery life, this is a good phone to look at. And finally, even though it's not part of the core package of the HTC One M8, I feel I have to talk about the new Dot View case, which is HTC's first-party case for the HTC One. Not only does it not add a ton of weight and size to the phone, it actually serves a functional purpose. As I mentioned earlier, if you double tap the screen, you get to power it on. With this, when you have this case on, it actually will show you information through these dots kind of perforated through the front of the case. So you'll see time, date, you'll see if you have a mail notification, or you can even answer or reject an incoming call, which is really, really cool. Of course, you got to pay extra for this, it's about $50, but if you're looking for a case for the HTC One M8, this one actually is pretty outstanding. But of course, this is just a small taste of the HTC One M8. There's plenty more to talk about, so make sure you head over to our full review.